What's up, my financially intentional people? I'm honored to have Erika Rasure join us today, and she is a very, very accomplished, as you'll hear, person in the finance space. Excuse me, Dr. Erika Rasure is what I should be calling her because she has earned those stripes. Without further ado, Erika, welcome to the Financially Intentional Podcast. How are you today?
I am having a beautiful day, and you are just a delight already. And
Of course, girl, we have fun here. So, Erika, tell us, how did you come into this space? Personal finance, especially professionally, is one of those male-dominated spaces, and so I'm always interested to know how a woman enters into this space. So, let us hear the tea.
Yeah, sometimes I like to think of it as a comedy of errors in a lot of ways. But the short version is my dad passed away when I was 13. He had multiple sclerosis. And both of my parents had been insurance agents. And so I learned about insurance and those kinds of things early on. And when he died, he didn't have life insurance except for a policy with the military because he had been diagnosed with MS. And with a lot of those illnesses, you do not have the ability to be insured. And so I really thought it would be interesting career-wise to become an estate planning attorney. And so that's where I started my college trajectory. I was like, yeah, I want to be an estate planning lawyer. And then I didn't. And I bombed the LSAT. I didn't even study for it, barely. And I was like, it didn't feel right to me anymore. And I think my values had changed a little bit just with my college experience and really getting out into the world a little bit. And I was like, there's got to be a different way to where I can support families who are going through some of these financial issues that don't come up unless there's some specific circumstances, right? And so I found financial planning and I went and visited the graduate director at the University of Missouri, go Mizzou. And from there, the rest was kind of history. So I started on that path and I found financial planning to be a really interesting home for me. And I went on to get my PhD, but when I was in my PhD program, that is where I really started to fall in love with the financial counseling and particularly the financial therapy aspects, the financial wellness aspects that are so beyond the technical components, people's relationships with money. And that's where I really started to see that shift in myself and that focus on helping people identify the areas of their life where they can really start to see some improvement and empowerment and confidence no matter what life throws at them. And that's where I have found myself now. I was a university professor for a lot of years. And then from there, I started working with Beyond Finance, which is a company that helps people with their overwhelming debt. And it's a place I never really thought I would be. And I want to elaborate on that a little bit here because you had mentioned it's going into a field that was primarily male dominated. That was tough. And, what's I think even tougher is that environment in which I was provided my education and that it was male dominated. And there was so much of the emotion taken out of money at that time. It's different. It's shifted now, which is wonderful. But at that time, it was very technical. It was emotionless. And there wasn't a lot of emphasis on this underpinning. And so when I was looking at moving into the debt space and helping people with this major life change, right? It wasn't death, it was debt. I had a lot of reservations about it because I had been told for years by the big shots in the industry or in academics that this was a scammy place to be. And what I feel about that now is totally different. And I've been completely humbled and changed as a result. And I have no regrets.
Oh, I love that. So many things to get into. First, I want to just talk about you went the academic route of financial planning. I know a lot of financial planners that just get licenses and they just get these certifications in different things, but they're just go the professional route versus the academic route. What is the difference in the training and the application for financial planning in that space?
Yeah, so there are some marked differences for sure. If you are interested in a career in financial planning, I think the premier certification that you would want to work toward is your CFP certification. And then there's all kinds of alphabet soup you can get after that. You might get some securities licenses. But there is a fair amount of training and support that goes into those things. But if you were interested in a career in financial planning, you definitely want to, I would recommend find a university that has a solid 4-year program in financial planning and complete that and work in that progression. As an academic, the it's a little bit different. You really focus on a master's degree, or you get the PhD in personal financial planning or consumer economics, or however that tends to work out. And then many academics do choose to get their CFP or their AFC or any of these other certifications or additional training and support to really help evolve the industry from the academics on the inside and the way that comes out on the outside with research and things of that nature. So they are two very different paths, but there is so much overlap, because I think what makes a good educator, especially truly in any field, is somebody who has experience in the field. And I think financial planning is certainly one of those areas when you can speak to what it is you're teaching from a very personal level and professional level, I think that is a game changer.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think like especially the research component and like having that knowledge base to back you is a lot different. But just like to be able to get the degrees and the certifications and really have that strong backing speaks a lot about like where you are in the profession. But I want to talk about the debt space, because I'm someone who is known for paying off a huge amount of debt in a very short period of time. And I saw people in that space take advantage of a lot of people. Yeah. And so I understand what people were saying, maybe from a consumer side, that it's like it could be a scammy place. But from your perspective, why do you think people were saying that for you to steer clear of that?
I think that's a great question. And I think there's a fair amount of validity to it. Years and years ago, you had these debt relief companies who were absolutely preying on people who were in very vulnerable situations. When you are robbing Peter to pay Paul and your minimum payments are becoming extremely unsustainable and you are desperate, there's so much money to be made in desperation. And it's disgusting, but that's the way the world tends to work, right? We exploit the vulnerable, we exploit the desperate. And so I think that's why there was so much success in those predatory type environments where you promise people hope. And they were hope peddlers, and they weren't able to follow through on those promises. And not only that is, when you think about these companies and you think about the vulnerability of these consumers, they know that people already feel tremendous amount of shame and guilt around their debt, and they want it gone. And these lofty ideas really just open the door to the worst predatory practices and lies and you name it. And people were victims of something that didn't have to be like that, but was, because it was easy.
Yeah, I personally went through that experience that when I was in college, it happened to me. It seemed like a lot of debt to me, maybe a couple $1,000s in credit card debt, because I went to college when the credit card companies used to be able to line the campus with their booths, and then you got it was a Frisbee free t-shirt.
Capstick.
Okay, sure. I'm going to sign up for the credit card. Why not? Oh, you're supposed to pay them back. Who knew? So anyway, so I went to one of these debt consolidation companies, and they were promising to negotiate with the creditors to get my payments reduced and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, great. They gave me this low payment. I paid it. They never negotiated. All my debts went bad. So that's an experience. That's like a perfect example of that experience that people are facing with scammy debt companies. And then I know that debt relief companies are a lot different now. Like I said, that was over 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, that's my fondest memory. And so when I went to pay off my debt 10 years ago when I paid it off, or 7 years ago when I paid it off, I was like, I will never work with those companies. Don't ever work with those companies. But I've learned more that now there's companies that can be trusted and can actually do those things, but it still leaves a bad taste in my mouth when I think about those debt relief companies.
Absolutely. Your experience was very typical of what a lot of people experienced. And you're right, 20 years ago, credit card companies could come to college campuses, they get the free pizza, the free Frisbee, the free chapstick, you name it. And college students are also a vulnerable population because close to 100% of people haven't had any sort of formal personal financial education. Like it's wild, like the amount of people who are so in the dark about this. And credit card companies and these scammy companies, they all know how to press the right buttons. And I'm so grateful that things have changed. And I think that is kind of one of the things I say in my group sessions a lot when I'm doing these sessions with Beyond Finance clients is the one thing that keeps me up at night are the people who aren't in these rooms with us. Because when we look at the statistics on consumer debt, and they're currently at $1.21 trillion, people are out there struggling with this big time.
That is one of the things I really had to reflect. Just this weekend, I was talking to a friend and I was like, man, I'm so grateful to have put these things in place a long time ago and got rid of all that debt, because things are crazy. One of my best friends just told me that she got laid off, and it broke my heart. She had been she'd been working at this place for 20 years and had gotten promised like a new job and all this stuff. And just like that, her job is gone. And I'm just, if that were to happen to me now, I would be okay. But for so many people, they're not. And yeah, so I'm just like, people, this is a wake up call, but I also feel like, God, it's kind of a little late for a lot of people, because they are, especially just with the things that have just been happening this year alone, have set people back a lot. So yes, that keeps me up at night too. The people that aren't on this path are these people that haven't had the opportunity to get their stuff together.
Yeah. And that's something I see all the time is I want to say that most people don't come into major debt situations without some sort of precipitating major life event.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like what you said, it's the being laid off, it's the being diagnosed with cancer, it is battling an addiction, it's losing a partner, whether that's death or divorce. There's so much context to
Mm-hmm.
the financial condition of debt that gets overlooked in both the professional aspects of the financial planning industry, but also the academic aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary.
It
It's
is.
scary out here. But I know that you focus heavily on financial wellness and financial well being. What is that exactly?
Yeah. So the way I describe financial wellness, it's something that includes your emotional, your psychological, your physical at times relationship with money and how that feels to you in all of those dimensions. And it considers how money supports your overall well being in life.
Mm-hmm.
Money is so interesting because it really is dimensional and dynamic to every aspect of your life. There's not one
Mm-hmm.
area of your life that money doesn't touch. And when you are in a position with money where it does not feel good to you, where you know that you are not well with your money, it affects your relationship with yourself. Affects your relationship with the people close to you and that you love, your relationship with people at work. It seeps into all of these areas of your life. And so if you're not good with your money from the inside out, that's where financial wellness turns into not being financially well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that focus though on
Yeah.
wellness, because I think when a lot of people think about where they are with their money, there's a lot of guilt and there's a lot of shame. And I think to give someone like a positive focus helps the process, helps them to get over that so that they can overcome whatever money obstacles and challenges they're having. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you talk about guilt and shame, and when it comes to financial wellness in particular, I think there's such an important distinction to be made there. And it really does affect people. But when we think about guilt, that's I made a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Shame is I am the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And when people feel that deep seated shame, the things I hear people say about themselves, people are spewing self hatred at themselves instead of self love in their words. Like, I am
Mm-hmm.
a stupid old person, or I am disappointing myself and everybody who taught me anything about money, or I am a failure. You notice that these are rooted deep in shame. Not,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I got into debt and life threw some hard things at me and I'm going to deal with it. And did I make some mistakes that I feel bad about? Sure. But that's a human way. That's guilt. But when you
Mm-hmm.
internalize that as you being the mistake or the problem or the failure, boy, that's hard to recover from.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think one of the things that when people come for help, I notice that oftentimes they think that it's, oh, I'm not budgeting correctly, or I'm not doing
Yes.
XYZ, or I'm not applying this certain tool correctly. But what it is that they have all this unhealed money trauma and all this guilt and shame around money that they haven't worked through. So no matter how much you budget, no matter how much debt you pay off, you're going to repeat this cycle because you haven't healed that baseline trauma. You keep on repeating those things that got you there in the first place.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
an absolute 100%, 1,000,000% correct observation. There's no doubt in my mind that if you are going to be good with money on the technical side, you have to be okay with healing and taking those steps to heal the trauma you've experienced and the emotional personal gravity that keeps you stuck flat on the ground, and learn how to release that so you can really expand into that desired place of financial safety or security or satisfaction that feels good to you. I know so many people who I work with a lot of wealthy clients too. Like in my personal practice, I work with people who make really, really great money, like tons of money, but they can't seem to enjoy it. It's either not
Yeah.
enough or they feel guilty about spending money. And so much of that is tied to the way they were socialized around money or experiences that they had around money while growing up or even into early or late adulthood. And it doesn't matter how much money you make or don't make. If you're not emotionally well with your money, you are not ever going to experience the levels of financial satisfaction that not only do you deserve, but like you want.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I think, and maybe you can help me with this, Erica, but there's always like this guilt and shame around money. But then there's this also, there's never enough. And like, where do you think that comes from? Where is that centered? Is that a cultural thing? Why do we do this?
So that is a question that is wonderful, and it is one that I answer regularly because you are so right. It's that scarcity mindset. So many
Mm-hmm.
people were raised in conditions where there was just not enough. They didn't
Yeah.
feel like there was enough. There wasn't enough for extras, or there wasn't enough even for the basics. And when you are in an environment and you're growing up where you feel the tension, where you feel that pressure, that there is just not enough money to go around, that can sometimes obviously continue well into adulthood. And so I typically see it take two tracks. It's people who are doing great things with their money and they just are never ever comfortable with the amount of money they have because they're afraid that it will go away.
Yeah.
And then there's the other camp, wherever they get money, they spend it immediately because they don't know when it's going to come back. And so it's this kind of cycle of feast and famine.
Mm-hmm.
And both sides of the coin deserve and need healing. Just because you have a lot of money and you have this scarcity mindset, that's not good for you either. And people have this idea that, oh, money will solve all my problems. No, 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 no. No, money, you can have all the money in the world, but you're still going to have problems.
Yes.
You can have rich people problems or you can have poor people problems, but you're going to have problems no matter where you're at.
I love that. I'd rather have rich people problems. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think most of us would. Yeah.
So let's talk about Beyond Finance and what you do there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Beyond Finance. Like I said, they changed my mind and my attitude, and I've never been so humbled. And I wouldn't even say it's necessarily the company. They're the ones who brought me in, which I'm grateful for, but it's actually the clients who humbled me, who changed my life. And I tell them that as often as I can. I work as their chief financial wellness advisor. And I run with a wonderful colleague 5 financial wellness sessions a week. And we spend in those sessions, they're about an hour long a piece. We spend about the first half of those sessions talking about some sort of financial wellness or education topic, things like financial trauma, for example, or what to expect with your credit score when you're going through the thick of the program. We try to cover a wide range of things. And then we talk to the clients. We have a live Q&A after that. And it's a wonderful structure that allows us to deliver some financial wellness education, but also lets us hear from the people who are going through the program and we've got people who are very new to the program, maybe just signed up in the last week, but we've got people who've been coming to our sessions for the last 3 years. And I love the dynamic that occurs because you've got people who are new and you've got the people who are veterans. And the people who are new are often very, very scared. They don't know how to trust themselves. They don't know if they can trust Beyond Finance. They're terrified of what's going to happen with their credit score and how to deal with creditors and all of these things that happen. And there's also these veterans who've been through all of it. And so there's this nice play and this reassurance that can happen and this nice mentoring that goes on. And I just love getting to hold space for and with these amazing people who are really going through it, but who have made a really, really important choice to transform their financial futures.
And to zoom out a little bit, what kind of company is Beyond Finance and how do people usually access the company?
So they are a debt consolidation company, and they help people rework their debt with their creditors. And a lot of people find Beyond Finance when they're up late at night because they have a stomach ache or they can't sleep because they're worried about their debt, and they're out there Googling like how to resolve my debt or how to consolidate my debt. And Beyond Finance, along with other companies, will show up. And so people give Beyond Finance a call. And that's typically what will start that process. And I think it's such an overwhelming and big step for people to take because at that point they are overwhelmed and they're scared and they don't know where to turn. And the other option is bankruptcy, right? Or continuing the cycle of making minimum payments for 20, 25 years. And I think Beyond Finance does a nice job of providing a sense of relief, an optional pathway. It's a path. It's not the only path, but it's something to try, something to maybe put a little bit of faith in or trust in. And for at least the people I've worked with, it's not without its frustrations. Let's be real, right? There's some wacky, scary things that can happen while in that process. But most of the people I've talked to who have graduated or right at graduation, they don't regret it. But like I said, it's not necessarily an easy path, but it's a path.
Yeah. So now, from my story about what happened to me 20 plus years ago with my debt consolidation, what's different about Beyond Finance?
So I think the biggest thing is transparency.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. And we live in a different time, I think, technologically as well.
Yes.
And I think that also lends to a lot of that transparency. But when people call in, they have that opportunity to learn about what Beyond Finance offers in terms of there's a dashboard. They can see the debts that they've enrolled and they can see with the progress and things that there's beautiful visuals. There's an app associated with all of this. And so people can see in real time what is going on with their accounts. I would also say that customer service is probably some of the best I've ever seen because the customer service reps are just acutely aware of the emotional aspects of being on this journey and what that looks and feels like throughout the process. And so I think that there is that level of human compassion that is unmatched. I've only worked with Beyond Finance. In my experience, it's unmatched. And when they reached out to me about maybe coming in and offering what I do to their clients, I immediately was like, I don't know how to describe it. Everybody there knows that I initially felt that way. I don't feel bad saying it because they know that's how I felt.
Yeah.
But what I loved is that, and what in my brain went off, I was like, if they are exploring offering this to other people,
yes,
I think I would be a real jerk and my karma is going to come back and get me if I don't at least hear what they have to say and help these people in any way I can. And in the process, I've again, been extremely humbled. But I think the differentiator is the transparency and the compassion and kindness and tenacity that Beyond offers to its clients. And it's the support when they go through the program. They get to come to our sessions for that support. It's not required as part of their program. The people who want to come, and they have more than one way to find support, and it's not just in the negotiation of debts. That's just one aspect of the program.
For me, just the simple fact of having access to someone like you and the education and the resources is beyond what I've seen offered in other debt consolidation companies. It really seems like they have a vested interest in making sure that people get out of debt and stay out of debt. Because again, this stuff is cyclical if you don't work on it. But you have to know that that's something that happens, right? A lot of people just don't understand. I don't know how many times I've heard, I don't understand why I'm back in this place. I thought I was doing everything right. And here I am back again. I paid off my debt and now I'm back. Like, what is happening? But to have someone be able to walk you through and to be a support in that process, I think is totally monumental. It's totally different than what other consolidation companies are doing, especially what they were doing back in the day. But I think that that's amazing. And I've never heard of a debt consolidation company do that either. And I think that it shows how far we've come in this space, but it also shows that this company in particular has a vested interest in really seeing people improve financially and not just come up off of someone's really, really hard time. It's not an opportunist thing. It's about, we really have a vested interest in seeing you thrive financially. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. And we joke in our sessions like, hey, I love seeing you every week. I don't want to see you back here in 4 or 5 years. Once you've graduated, like I would like you to just go and be successful. And that is an expectation we set early on. We want people to take this as an opportunity to grow and learn. Building financial strength is a lot like building muscle in the gym. Sometimes you got to tear that muscle down and rebuild it stronger. And all of that stuff they're doing while they're in the program, they're dealing with the creditor calls, they're dealing with the healing of the financial condition of debt, and they're dealing with the healing of everything that got them there. They're putting the reps in. They are doing this, and every time they put a rep in, that is one step closer to transformation. That is one step closer to progress. And that is like the thing I think that makes the biggest difference is once people start seeing that these things are what makes them successful, not failures, is where that healing really does begin to take off. They build their muscle.
Yeah. So objectively, or more like objectively, what are some of the debt payoff milestones within the company? Or is there like a certain amount, like a minimum debt you have to do debt consolidation?
I think it varies with every type of company, but I believe, and I don't remember exactly, but I think you have to have at least $10,000 or $12,000 to enroll in Beyond Finance. Again, don't quote me on that, but we've seen people come in with all kinds of ranges. We've had people who have $100,000 of debt enrolled, and sometimes even more. And it just depends on in what order the accounts get settled and things like that. But people do have the ability to, especially within what they can see in their dashboard, they have these beautiful visuals of as things get paid off, they get to see those changes and they get to see that forward progress as that goes on.
I know a lot of people are concerned about debt consolidation because of the potential impact it can have on their credit and the potential of being able to finance things like or buy houses or cars. What impact does debt consolidation truly have?
Yeah. And the impact is huge. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all because it's huge, but it's temporary. So I want to temper it with that. It is temporary. But what happens is if you are engaging with a company like Beyond Finance and you're working with a company, you've hired a company to negotiate your debts on your behalf, one of the things that you can and I think in the first 3 to 6 months of any of these types of programs, they're going to be the hardest. I think that is the rockiest road. That is the rockiest part because most people are going to see a significant initial drop in their credit score. And that credit score drop is, at the very least, I can say scandalous, because a lot of people come in to the program with really good credit scores, high 6s, 7s, 8s. And that's because they have been so diligent with making their payments. 35% of your credit score is made up of your ability to make your payments on time. And when you are shifting out of that space and you're working with the consolidation or resolution company directly, that's not going directly to the creditor. And so you're going to start missing those payments, and your credit score is going to take that 100, 200, 300 point dive. And that really, really scares people. And it scares people from a lot of perspectives. But one of the reasons, just visually, it is rough to watch. Yeah. But two, a lot of people put and equate their financial worth when it comes to their credit score, the value of their credit score, and they equate it to their self-worth as a person. When you think about it, like, would you ever date a guy with a low credit score or date a girl with a low credit score? Like, no, we've been taught that.
A lot about you, yeah.
We don't want no scrubs in the words of TLC. I'm dating myself now. We've been taught those messages growing up, and we've been taught those things by our parents or the important grown-ups in our lives as we've evolved from childhood to adulthood. And so people have to rumble with the idea that, okay, now my credit score is low and I have to have a credit score, or it's really high and now I have no social worth or stability too. So there's a lot that is wrapped up in that. And I like to remind people that your credit score is really just an indication on whether or not you're going to get more debt on sale or at retail sticker price. Because that's the only thing our credit score indicates, is how cheap our interest is. That's it.
Yep.
And it's for more debt.
Right.
So when you are going through this program, you have to emphasize that this is temporary, because we're not here in these types of programs because we have a credit score issue. We're here because we have a debt issue. And the credit score is the symptom that we have to acknowledge, but also to treat. We have to sacrifice that to the credit gods for a little while as we work through that.
So just for my clarification, when you work with a debt consolidation company, or is it you miss those payments because they have to miss the payments to be able to negotiate with the credit card company, or why are those payments missed?
Yeah, so in most situations, what happens is a client will start paying, like you mentioned, you start paying, in your experience, you start paying the company an amount, right? And you start building up with the intention that they will negotiate on your behalf. And so they start doing that. And that's exactly how that works.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify, because it's been a minute.
It's a good clarification point. Yeah. So wait a second, like, how are we missing payments here, right?
Yes.
It's because you stop making payments directly to the creditor.
And then when you say it's temporary, like, how long does it take for somebody to get back to that place where they can get cheaper credit?
Yeah, I like to say that it varies, but I do know that a huge population of the people, close to 100% of the people who graduate from the Beyond program, they have as good, if not better, credit than when they first came in. So that's a really encouraging statistic, with the undertone that they don't have the debt underneath them any longer. But at the same time, there's some uncertainty from people. How long is this going to take? And humans aren't exactly the most patient of anybody, right?
Not at all.
And so my answer for that is it depends. And I think it depends on a lot of different factors. I think it depends on how much you enrolled into the program. I think it depends on which accounts get settled first and what amounts those look like. And your credit score is going to do a lot of up and down. And that has to do with the components that actually make up your credit score. Because as if you're maxed out, 30% of your credit score is made up of your credit utilization. And so if you're maxed out and things are starting to get settled, your debt load starts to go down. But there is that crunch there too, and that credit utilization. And so that's at play. And then the payment thing is on time, and even like your credit mix can change. And so it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. And it levels out at some point to where it starts to go up. I think I have people in my sessions that come who, I had one lady last week, she's been in the program since September, and her credit score's already gone up 50 points.
Wow.
Where another client was like, what do you mean? I've been in here since September and my credit score is the same. What is happening here? Why isn't this happening to me? And then you have to deal with that too. It's like the comparing yourself to other people. Why does her credit score get to go up and mine doesn't get to go up? And it's like, my loves, everybody is different. Everybody has a different financial makeup as they come into the program. And so we have to be especially kind to ourselves in those situations, because not only are you dealing with the credit stuff, which happens to everybody, but then there's also that comparison factor of why isn't that happening for me? And why is my time frame different? And that can really start to affect people too.
Yeah. But on average, how long does it take people usually to get through the program?
Oh, to get through the program?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, about 4 years is what I've seen. The clients who I work with, it's usually about 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
The thing is, that sounds really, really long for some people. Yeah. But when I tell you, like, that time is going to go by anyway. And a lot of people just don't understand. Like, they think, oh my God, 4 years sounds like a long time, until you're on the back end of it. And then you're just like, man, that was just 4 years. It only took me 4 years to do that.
To think about the alternative too, right? So the alternative is you suck it up for 4 years and you just get through it, or you're dealing with 20 or 25 years of making minimum payments. And even in that situation, like you said, people are like, how do I get credit after going through this type of program? You're not going to be able to get credit if you're letting your minimum payments roll for 20 or 25 years, because your debt to income ratio is going to be too high and you're going to get denied anyway.
Yeah. But from your perspective as a finance professional, what's the difference between going through one of these programs and then filing for bankruptcy? Or just not doing anything? We already talked about not doing anything, but we know about that. But okay, then why don't I just file for bankruptcy?
I think and I'm very morally neutral on bankruptcy. In a lot of situations, I do think bankruptcy is the better option. And you want to talk about guilt and shame. That's where that shame really comes in with bankruptcy. Yeah. Bankruptcy seems just like a really, really big, horrible, scary thing. And I think for a lot of people, that makes just a lot of sense, because we've been taught that way. But like I said, I think for some people, it makes a whole lot of sense. I think the biggest difference I would say is one is far more invasive than the other. With a bankruptcy, you have all kinds of legal disclosures. You have all kinds of things you have to submit when there's hearings and court dates and final judgment and all of that. And it can be pricey, right? It can be expensive. I know it varies by attorney and by state and by jurisdiction, but bankruptcies can be very expensive. But rather than just talking about the expense, it's the invasiveness, I think, that really freaks people out. And the difference, I think, with companies like Beyond Finance is it does feel a little bit less invasive. There's a lot of discomfort, sure. But I think for people, it makes them feel slightly more in control of the process. And it's not like people aren't paying a fee to Beyond Finance to help them with this, but it just, I think for a lot of people, it doesn't feel as scary. It's still scary, but not as scary.
Yeah. I've done both. Like, I filed for bankruptcy, and it is very invasive and it's very humiliating and humbling. But I will say that I'm glad I did. I'm glad I was able to do it when I was in my 20s and I had a long time to recover from it. But it really didn't take as long as I thought to recover. But then I also didn't have that support on the back end like you guys are offering, so that I could really understand what that cycle of debt was. I still came out pretty financially naive. Part of my problem was solved and I knew better than to get back in credit card debt. But that was just like, I just don't want to do that anymore, because that was really, really hard to get out of.
It's tough. Debt is just a tough place to be. And like I said, that financial condition of being in debt comes with so many emotions wrapped into it. But I think what debt can teach us is that we can become empowered through our debt to be cycle breakers, not only for ourselves, but for our children, for future generations. So I think one of the things that really has been such a disservice is the ability or willingness to talk about money in meaningful ways. People don't talk about their money when it's good. Nobody's out there being like, I got a 30% bonus and that bonus was
Oh no,
60,000.
I do. And I get so much backlash for it. Let me tell you. First of all, I live in California. There's pay transparency, but I talk about my pay because I'm a nurse and a lot of people just don't know that nurses can have a living wage. Go figure. Yeah. But when I talk about it, people are just like, you shouldn't talk about your money. Or even like I share like things about my kids, like their net worth and all these kind of things. Oh, you're becoming a walking target. I remember when I started my platform, my grandfather was like, somebody's going to try to rob you because they think that you have this amount of money. And I was like, why would they rob me? There's a lot of richer people. You can Google people's net worth. What is like, why is there so much angst about talking about money? And the thing I like to say is that the only people that tell you that talking about money is taboo are the people that have a vested interest in seeing you broke.
I love that. I love that. Wow, the vested interest in keeping you broke. Oh, right. What a line! I want to put that on a T-shirt. My goodness. I don't know if you do any merch, but I think that needs to be like set in stone forever. Yeah, because you're right. These conversations, secrets thrive in the dark, don't they?
Domestic violence, abuse, all of that stuff. It happens only because you keep it a secret. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And the more we can talk about it and be really open with ourselves and whatever audience you have, I think it's such an important place to be because it gives people the confidence to say, I need to have these important conversations. I need to do better for myself or for my kids. And we don't have to knock the people who gave us the values we inherited, but we have and we reserve the right to modify our values as we see fit to fit our life experience and what we want the future to look like for ourselves and for our kids. And I talk to my kids all the time about money. They'll ask me, how much was your car, Mom? Or how much was the mortgage on the house? And I remember when they first started asking me those questions, and I felt weird. You feel weird when you've been taught not to. Mm-hmm. And at one time I was like, no, you guys can know, and that's okay.
Yeah. I have those conversations regularly. So for people who are like right now in the situation where they feel like, oh my God, maybe it's too late. I'm not at the place where I want to be financially or I'm scared I lose my job and I'm going to lose everything. What advice do you have for those people?
Yeah. First, it's never too late.
Yeah.
What I tell my clients all the time is everybody is one major life event away from being in debt. Mm-hmm. And the thing about debt is it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how much money you make. It doesn't care how much money you don't make. It doesn't care how educated you are. Or how much you are not educated. It's something that can happen to anyone at a moment's notice. And you are never far behind unless you choose to remain there. Once you notice a pattern, once you have those feelings, once you're listening to the money stories in your head and really listening to them, when you go make a purchase or you feel guilty about making that purchase, stop and ask yourself, why do I feel like that? Mm-hmm. Where is this coming from? Mm-hmm. Is this coming from me? Is this coming from somebody else? And it just starts with bringing that awareness to your mind, to your body, to your soul, and letting yourself learn in that space from the things you've been taught, from the things you believe, and starting to make sense of those patterns, those stories, those beliefs, and those values, and begin trying to make them your own.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So for people who maybe aren't necessarily ready to do like a debt consolidation, what are some things that they can do to, first of all, get their mind right? We talked about that a little bit, but then just what are some things that they can do to prevent like massive credit card debt or just reorder their finances?
So I think there's a lot you can do, and with anything, and everybody has an opinion, right? And so I'll give you my observations. It's not necessarily set in stone here, but some of the things I've seen my clients have success with, again, is the bringing awareness to behaviors in action. And so if you are somebody who knows that you're an overspender, let's say, for example, you can't go to Target without walking out with $100 or $150 of things you don't need. Mm-hmm. that is the place where you start. You start recognizing, okay, this is where I'm spending money. You have to know where your money is to do something about it. And you have to know your triggers. And everybody has a trigger for spending money or even not spending money. Okay. But if you are spending money in a way that does not feel good to you, you've got to focus right there, first and foremost. And one of the things I say a lot is you have to play the tape forward. With every financial decision you make or financial behavior you decide to engage in, you ask yourself, okay, does this feel good right now? Of course it does, probably, right? Let's be real. Is it going to feel good when I get to the car? Or when those stack of Amazon packages get delivered to my house? Am I going to feel good then? Maybe. You might get excited. You might get that rush. Am I going to feel good in a week? Am I going to feel good when I get that credit card statement? If any of those answers is no, walk away from the cart.
Yep.
Start journaling about it. That's what I did to stop my own overspending. I couldn't budget to save my life. I have a PhD in personal financial planning, and I help people not be in this position, right? But I have struggled with overspending for a really long time, and it had everything to do with me using the wrong budgeting technique for myself. And that's how I held myself accountable. I got a journal from the dollar store and I kept it in my glove box. And anytime I'd go in and I was displeased with what I purchased or my financial behaviors, I would write down like, hey, I did a really great job today, nothing to report, or I definitely overspent by like $30. These things were on my list. I already feel bad about it, but I don't want to take it back because that'd be embarrassing. So I'm going to do better next time.
Yeah.
Or there were some days where I'd be like, I had to abandon a cart fully in the store because I got completely out of control because I was stressed out with this thing at work and I was emotional spending. And I feel really bad for that Target person who's going to have to restock, but I had to do it. And I'm really proud of myself for that. And I'm so sorry to the Target person. And you send that out into the universe. That's how healing happens. And so you find those things that work for you. And at the very beginning of our call, you were talking a little bit about budgeting, and you have to find the tools that work for you. And some of those might be unconventional, but I think so many people are afraid to explore. And that's my other piece of advice here. Explore things. Nobody's judging you. The only person that's going to judge you is yourself. But I also want to remind you that nobody cares about your money as much as you're going to. So ignore the haters. Ignore the haters, ignore the opinions of others that don't matter. Your opinion and what you feel about yourself and of your money is what matters. And I think people do really get hung up to when people can do really well, in my experience of observation. They can do really well when it's just them. Or where people tend to fall off the proverbial wagon when it comes to their finances is when they are out with friends or socializing and they don't know how to say, I'm working on my financial fitness or my financial journey and I'm doing really good, because they're afraid to talk about it. They're afraid of being judged. And if you're in credit card debt or you're trying to even avoid credit card debt, there's a lot of people out there who are like, it's an experience, charge it. Money will always come back to you. And the experience is more important. You have to be the one in your group who puts the foot down. And a lot of people struggle with being able to put the foot down for themselves. And sometimes, unfortunately, that leads to not being included in things. And to that, I say, I'm really sorry that you've experienced that, but were those people really your friends anyway? And then that's a whole new level of grief you have to deal with, right?
Exactly.
And that then becomes a new potential financial trauma, right? That anytime you talk or anytime you express your desire to do better, you lose people. And so you have to also bring that awareness to the idea that when you make changes, people around you can change too.
Also, like, it's hard with a partner too. That's,
oh my gosh,
that's even on a whole nother level. Like, you're trying to get yourself together and then you have a partner that's on a whole different page. What's the number one reason for divorce, right?
Money. People think it's cheating, but it's money.
It's not. It's finances. It's money always. So I was just thinking, like, that journaling idea is incredible. I love that. I've never heard of that. I know there's a million ways to look at your money, but like journaling, I love that. But I also love what you said about people think there's like this one-stop shop way to deal with things. And how could there be when there's so many different genres of music? There's so many different dance style. There's so many different everything. Why would you think there's just one budget solution that's going to work for everyone, or one way to get on top of your spending that's going to work for everyone? There's not one way. The thing is to find out what works for you and continue to do that. Yeah.
100%.
So I love that you
The
brought
thing
that up.
that you can do conscientiously and consistently and sustainably, that's the thing that's gonna be your magic bullet. There is no magic bullet, let's be real, but there's so much you can do for yourself, and it's prioritizing. If you don't have an emergency fund, that's one of my biggest financial building blocks. Like, get that emergency fund. And one of the things that completely stresses me out, and to your point, people think that there's this one size fit all and it's very this or that. There's so much bad and good thrown out there when it comes to financial education. It's like savings is good, debt is bad, budgeting is good, not budgeting is bad. And it's very black and white.
Yeah.
And I think the most fun to play in is this space where it's gray, but it's just allowing yourself to explore and find those things that work for you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's what works best for you. And same thing with an emergency fund, going back to that, there's that idea that you have to save three months of expenses or 6 months of expenses. How crazy does that sound for somebody who is struggling to make ends meet and is also trying to pay off credit card debt? That sounds like the dumbest ask of all time.
Isn't that crazy? Like, what? I don't even have $5, and now you want me to put this money away and I have to pay all these bills? What are you saying? That doesn't even make any sense. Yes.
Yeah. And so when you're able to put that into context for people who are struggling with that or trying to get out of it themselves, and they're doing a good job, they're putting all that extra work, or maybe they're working extra hours and they're using whatever method that they're working with that seems to be working, and they're doing it by themselves. Huge congratulations to that. But there is no money for an emergency fund. And that's where I challenge people or ask people to think about having one in the future.
Yeah.
We know what it's like to only have $5 to your name, and how much that $5 is of importance and how far it will or will not go. And I encourage people to take that same mentality when they're thinking about funding an emergency fund. If you can't do $5 right now, maybe in 6 months you can. And that $5, you know how much that $5 means. And don't let anybody tell you that it's only $5, that it should be 6 months of expenses. That $5 was all you had months ago. And that $5 was the richest you've ever felt.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that shift. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and saying, listen, I have a PhD in this and I still struggle, because a lot of people need to hear that. People need to know that there is hope for them and that it's normal to struggle with money. Even though this is what your degree is in and you're experiencing, you work in it every day, doesn't mean that you don't have your own struggles, but it also makes it relatable because you understand what people are going through. And so people feel like they can talk to you because it's not just like she hasn't gone through that. What does she know about what I'm going through? Like we are just one step maybe ahead of where you are in this path. And so we can really feel those things because we have gone through those things. We know what it feels like. We know how we got there, but we also know how we recovered from it. And so I just love people who have their own testimony to share, even in this space, to say, look, I'm not perfect. I'm a financial professional and I'm not perfect. And I know these things. And I really think that gives people hope. And I know that people are going to want to reach out to you to work with you. So where can people do that?
So I think the best way to reach out to me, if you're interested in Beyond Finance and what they do, and if that sounds like it might be something you're looking at doing, I'd hit beyondfinance.com up. Just get some more information and know that if you like what I have to say, I do that 5 times a week in the program, and you would be able to work with me in those types of settings for sure. But if you are looking to contact me for anything outside of what I do with Beyond, you can always add me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at Erika Rasure, IKARASURE @gmail.com.
I love that.
I keep it super simple around here, like the simplest. I don't even have a website. Like
Easy
it's just
peasy. Listen, just email me, hit me up on
just
LinkedIn.
email me.
I
It's
know,
fine.
but that eliminates a lot of the barriers that people feel like they have
Yeah.
to overcome in order to get to you. So I hope people take you
Yeah.
up on that, because I love what you're doing. You have a wealth of knowledge in these areas, but just focus more on the wellness piece is what I love. And a lot of people
Yeah.
just need that kind of that helping hand to guide them along. They don't need to be talked down to.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they think is going to happen when they reach out for support. And so I hope
Yeah.
they can see from this interview that that's not what it's about. It's really coming
Right.
from a place of empathy, a place of really trying to help people heal and really move on so they can be successful and enjoy their money. So thank you,
Yeah.
Erika. I love
Yeah.
this interview.
My pleasure. This was the most fun I've had in a really long time. So thank you so much. Oh,
I
it's
love it. You're
fantastic.
welcome.
And before we leave entirely, I
Mhm.
have one more message for your listeners, and that's you're just seconding what you said. You are not alone in this
Mhm.
process.
Yeah.
And I sign off every session by saying you are cared for, you are supported. And if nobody has told you today, you are so incredibly loved.
Aw.
You are you are not alone on this process. People are struggling with debt, and it is okay to look and find help. It does not
Yep.
mean you are a failure at all. Seeking
Yep.
help means that you are taking your first step towards transforming your feelings towards yourself, towards your money, and your long lasting financial wellness that you deserve. You deserve it.
I love that. I receive it and I hope everybody else receives it. So thank you, Dr.
You're
Rasure.
welcome.
I love this.